Hi and welcome back. In this film, the first of two, Dr Asad Khan and I ask intensive care physician Dr Wes Ely about how he became involved in long COVID, what it takes to get large-scale treatment trials off the ground, and why there's one in particular he's excited about, and we are too. Hope you find it interesting.
Thank you so much for joining us, Wes. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. I was wondering if we could start off by if you could tell us a little bit about your professional history and how that led you to come into contact with what we're calling long COVID and people who are suffering with long COVID.
My name is Wes Ely, and I am a practicing intensivist, so ICU doctor at Vanderbilt University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. You can see that I've got this gray hair. I'm kind of an old guy. I'm 59 years old, and I've been practicing medicine for over 30 years. So my area of expertise is that I clinically take care of people who undergo acute illnesses that have major ramifications for their life. And I study that situation. So we design here at our research center large cohort studies in the neighborhood of thousands of patients and clinical trials. And we get them funded by the NIH, the VA. We have currently about $36 million in NIH funding. With our next round of long COVID money, we probably will have it in the $60 million range to do real science to help reduce human suffering. At the beginning of COVID, most of COVID patients were getting tremendously ill prior to the time of vaccines and were landing in our ICU. So I was caring for critically ill patients in the ICU with COVID, and I was getting emailed from people all over the world because I'd done all this work on delirium and the rapid acquisition of dementia. And so people were writing to me and saying, Wes, this is crazy. Their brains are totally out. What's going on? Let's study it. So we designed a study called the COVID-D study, COVID delirium study. And we published it in Lancet Respiratory of 2,100 acutely ill COVID patients. This is how it got connected to long COVID. I started thinking, well, all of this is just PICS. It's post-intensive care syndrome, which we've been studying for 20 years. And then people started contacting me. And here's where I learned I was wrong. I mean, I was so wrong. People started contacting me saying, I can't think anymore. My brain and body don't work. And I was never in the hospital. I got COVID and I was only mildly ill at my house, and I got a little better for 2-3 months. And then 100 days later, bam, this hit me like a ton of bricks. And I started realizing, wow, it's not all PICS, post-intensive care syndrome. There's 2 or 3 problems going on. One is ICU survivors with PICS. 2 are people who never were critically ill but get long COVID. And then there's a third group who have both. And I wrote this article in Stat News called something like "Don't Silence COVID Patients with Long COVID," and it went bonkers. It was just on Twitter, virally spread, etc. And I realized that I struck a nerve, kind of like you, Jez, when you started putting these YouTube posts up and everybody was responding to you like they wanted to talk, and you were a great ear. So that's how I got connected with long COVID. And basically, as a scientist, I've never looked back. I was like, this is a fascinating area. People are suffering like crazy. It fits in with everything I do about acute problems in a human body that we don't understand enough. Let's care for these people clinically, and let's find them scientific answers.
So what is the most interesting research that you've either seen or been involved with that might explain some of the pathophysiology of what's going on?
Yeah, well, this is a fascinating story, and it starts in the UK. An investigator named Justin Stebbing and colleagues asked a computer what the computer thought would be the best drug for COVID. And so the computer in this Lancet paper, and the computer spits out this series of, after 500-600 drugs, here are the drugs we think will work, and here's the main drug we think will work. And that drug was a JAK STAT inhibitor that's currently FDA approved for rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and alopecia areata. It's called baricitinib. So I have no financial conflicts of interest, by the way, with this drug. I have not accepted a single penny for any of this research and won't accept any because I don't want the listeners to think that I'm making any money off this. I have no stock in this company, anything. And anyway, an HIV researcher and I, Vince Marconi, worked with them and designed this very large clinical trial done in 12 countries, 1,500 people. And it became the largest survival advantage of any drug in the COVID era. I'll say it another way. We did a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial of Barry versus placebo for acutely ill COVID patients, anybody on oxygen. And we had the largest survival advantage of any drug, including steroids, tocilizumab, Paxlovid, any of those drugs. And it got FDA approved. It's a top tier for World Health Organization approval for acute COVID. And we made the company, we said, if we're going to do this and if it works, we want you to make it available for LMICs, lower middle income countries. So millions of people have gotten that drug for free all over the world, which I'm a big public health advocate. So I think this is a great thing. Anyway, now we want to study that same immunomodulator in long COVID. And I can talk more about that if you want me to.
Please.
Yeah. So as we began learning about long COVID, we began realizing that what's happening in the human body is that the virus comes in through the respiratory epithelium, denudes and trashes the respiratory epithelium, a pneumonia occurs. But the virus is also obviously attaching to the ACE2 receptor, which are on the lining of blood vessels. So your blood vessels have this beautiful endothelium on both sides. And in that endothelium, those cells, there is the same ACE2 receptor. So that and other receptors in the brain are places that the virus is inducing pathology. And not only is it inducing pathology during the acute event, but something happens to the immune system that essentially turns on a light switch so that the immune system becomes chronically agitated and active. And we think there's ongoing antigenic stimulation long after, weeks and months after the acute viral illness is gone, which leads to long COVID, or at least part of the long COVID story. Part of it could be viral reactivation, immune reactivation. There's all kinds of ways we're fighting our own self during that time, autoimmunity. And then there are other theories as well of long COVID, but one of them at least is this dysregulated autoimmunity. And so we think that it might be helpful. This is the hypothesis. The hypothesis is that we will improve long COVID symptomatology by giving an immunomodulator to people who have active long COVID disease or the syndrome. And I am an investigator who studies a lot about rapidly acquired dementia. So PICS creates in too many people, millions of people, and a rapidly acquired dementia process. And it looks a lot phenotypically like long COVID's cognitive impairment. So that's why we're interested in studying immunomodulation in long COVID, with the primary outcome being the brain recovery, and the secondary outcome being cardiovascular outcomes like POTS disease, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
So what do you need to do to get this trial up and running? Like, where are you at in that? How do you want to design it? How's it going to work? How long is it going to take?
So I'll show you. I'm reaching over my desk here. So this is for your YouTube, since this is visual, this is a grant. This is a 470-page grant, which I wrote, and I sent to the NIH. And what happens is that we write these grants, we see if we can get federal funding for them, because it takes millions of dollars to do such a trial. And we are hoping that this grant gets funded. I'm going to only reveal so much right now because I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think that we are in a place where eventually we'll be doing this trial. I'm just going to avoid specifics because I don't want people to hold me to different dates and such. But we are extremely actively planning this clinical trial. It's called Reverse Long COVID, or Reverse LC. We will do this with investigators from Emory and University of California, San Francisco, Minnesota, Vanderbilt. We will do our absolute best to have patient-led representatives. They're already on our administrative and scientific team. So we are listening to the long COVID community. And we are going to design this clinical trial in a way that the long COVID community will be proud to be a part of it, that we will be sensitive to their needs. For example, when they're having a flare, that we don't want them to feel obligated to do things related to the trial that will worsen their flare. We will make it so that we will be user-friendly to the patients who are enrolled in this clinical trial. And what they will do is they will come in, get screened. If they have long COVID and fit the entry criteria and no exclusion criteria, they'll get randomized to either receive placebo or baricitinib for 6 months. And we will measure their baseline brain function, 6-month and 12-month brain function, as well as cardiovascular function. We're very sensitive to the ME/CFS community. We'll be measuring ME/CFS parameters as well, because we know there's a tremendous overlap with ME/CFS. And we'll be doing all of this with some of the best immunologists and scientists in the world. And I am just a member of this team. I'm a cog in the wheel. I view myself as a public servant of the long COVID community, and that's how we're going to try and get this off the ground and done if the National Institute of Health provides this funding, which it's looking very positive.
Amazing
Thanks.
to hear that. Best of
Thank
luck.
you.
It's our privilege. It's been a real labor of love. I've spent way too many long nights sitting right here at this desk. And my 2 rules for research are that I only study things where either answer matters, and I study what you have a lot of. We have right now a lot of long COVID, and whatever we find with this immunomodulator is important. I actually I make no money off this book. I wrote this book last year. It's called Every Deep Drawn Breath. It won the Christopher Award for works that meet the motto, it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. So what we're trying to do here is light candles instead of curse the darkness. And every penny from this book goes back to long COVID patients and their families.
I've certainly got my fingers crossed that the reverse long COVID trial with baricitinib gets proper funding, because we do need more large, well-planned trials just like this. In the next film with Dr Wes Ely, Dr Asad Khan and I discuss how he's treating long COVID patients right now and what his dream list would be for other treatment trials. Just a quick word on a couple of other things. If you're not aware of the Long Covid Handbook and you happen to want a singular resource that brings everything we know about the condition together, well, perhaps you should be. Links in the description. And a quick shout out for my second channel, Flip the Script, where I break down from an insider's perspective why big films and TV shows work or don't. Again, links in the description. Look after yourselves. Until next time.